Hello.
Hi, hello. Thanks for joining us, Lisa.
Of course, I can only be here for a little bit, but I thought I would come for the first half hour.
Well, appreciate you. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
All right, well, it's 2 o'clock, so let's go ahead and get started. Thanks everyone for being here today. Just a reminder to please put your mic on mute. You think after how many months into the pandemic are we'd be able to figure that out, but still we're still got the mics, the hot mics, and as we know, that can get us in trouble every once in a while. So anyway, thanks for being here. Really appreciate you guys spending an hour together talking about Junction Plaza Park. The format of today's meeting is we are honored to welcome some panel members that we'll be introducing in just a second. And then the panel members will then go around again and talk a little bit about how they intersect with either homelessness or crime in the city of Seattle and also in West Seattle as well. And then I have some questions that we've prepared, and these are questions that have been extracted from the West Seattle blog. So thank you, Tracy, for putting some posts up about the meeting today, a very important one. And then we'll open the questions to people on this call. I'm also the host and the moderator as well. So you can either raise your hand or put your virtual hand up, or probably a combination of the both. And then you can go ahead and ask the question, and then we'll direct that question to the correct panel member. And then we'll do some closing remarks and also the next steps as well. I want to keep in mind that this is not a discussion about criminalizing homelessness. This is a discussion about the things that the community and the West Seattle businesses have experienced while we've had the hygiene stations in the park. So anyway, I just want to make those rules clear to everybody before we move forward. And so what I'd like to do is introduce our panel members. Lisa, I'm going to start with you. If you could introduce yourself, please. And turn your mic off. I know, duh!
Lisa Herbold, Seattle City Council member, District 1 for West Seattle and South Park. I did not realize I was a panel member, but thank you for inviting me to participate in this way. And, you know, my involvement is really focused on raising and amplifying your voices as it relates to getting the attention of existing city services, and when the city services don't exist, working to advocate for policy and budget changes to address those needs.
Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate you being a surprise panel member. And then we also have, Tess Colby as well. She's from the mayor's office. Tess, if you want to take yourself off mute. Okay, we'll skip Tess for now. And then we also have Tom as well from the Department of Neighborhoods.
Hi, yeah, this is Tom Van Bronkhorst. I'm with the City of Seattle Department of Neighborhoods, and I'm assigned to, for the last few years, I've been assigned to homelessness response and more recently COVID response in 2020. And that's pretty much my nexus with this.
Thank you. And then we also have Bill from Seattle Public Utilities.
Yeah, hi, Bill Benzer, Seattle Public Utilities. We're recently involved with the response to COVID-19.
Bill, could you talk up a little bit, please, Bill?
Yeah, I'll try to get closer to my mic. Yeah.
Thank you.
So, we recently got involved with response to COVID-19 and homelessness by working with an interdepartmental team to install porta potties and hand wash stations.
Okay, thank you. And then I see Tess has just joined us. So Tess, we're just doing panel introductions right now. If you'd like to introduce yourself and how your position intersects with homelessness in the city.
Yes, sorry about that. I was on and my sound wasn't working, so now I think I'm better. I am with the mayor's office, and I'm her advisor specifically on homelessness, the extent of my portfolio.
Okay, thanks for joining us. Appreciate that. And we have Erin as well from LEAD.
Hi, I'm Aaron Burkhalter. I'm a project manager with the LEAD program in Burien and White Center, and I'm the project manager that's working on expansion efforts in the West Seattle area. And just very briefly, the program that we work with, we're working with people who are engaged in the criminal justice system, who have behavioral health challenges, and are living in extreme poverty. And I would say the vast majority of the clients that we work with are experiencing homelessness.
Thanks, Erin. Thanks for joining us. And finally, we have Sina. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. I'm so sorry. From SPD.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Cena Avenger. I'm the operations lieutenant out of the Southwest Precinct, and I back Captain Grossman, who's the precinct commander. Sorry, he can't be here today, so I'm a stand-in.
Well, thank you, and a fine stand-in you are. Thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it. All right, well, let's get to the questions, and and keep in mind that the junction has been, as the whole community has the whole city and nation, we've all been grappling with the pandemic over the last number of months. West Seattle has especially been impacted by the loss of the West Seattle Bridge. And so we've all been working together to, support our community and to support each other. And in the midst of that, we have a small pocket park in the junction called Junction Plaza Park. And it's one of our only pieces of green space in the junction. And over the years, people have used it to eat picnics and to walk their dogs. We've produced many events there, like Hometown Holidays and parts of Harvest Fest and parts of Summerfest. In the last few months, a couple of hygiene stations have shown up, and they were put in the park from the folks at the Human Services Department. And again, when I started this meeting, it has nothing to do with criminalizing homelessness, but the business owners and also the community members, we've observed some behavior that has not been, it's been partially frightening, and it's also been destructive. And I've been having a very difficult time keeping the streets clean and safe in the junction. So the purpose of the meeting is just to bring everybody together and have a frank conversation, and then also develop some next steps as well. And so I think it would be good to start off with Tom. And maybe, Tom, if you could give us some idea as to why we ended up with these hygiene stations. But before we do, I actually skipped over a very important person, and I'm so sorry, but we also have Joe Everett with us as well, and he is from the city attorney's office. So Joe, if you'd like to introduce yourself and give us a little bit of background of how you work with the homeless folks, and also how you deal with criminal behavior in the city.
Thanks, Laura. Thanks for having me. No worries at all, obviously. Hi, everybody. My name is Joe Everett. I'm an assistant city attorney. The city attorney's office, I'm assigned as a liaison to the Seattle Police Department, Southwest Precinct. So, in the before times, I would go to an office that was actually in the precinct. I worked directly with SPD, and primarily with SPD on their work on chronic neighborhood problems. So, problems that generate a significant amount of 911 calls, or problems that SPD is not primarily equipped to handle by itself. I will help by providing, legal advice on the fly, or I oftentimes am tasked with coordinating cooperation between departments of the city. because obviously the city's approach to homelessness is a multi-departmental approach. And so to the extent I can help with coordination, I do that. And hopefully that answered your question. But yeah, we work on neighborhood problems that are tough to crack, that can't be solved by one 911 call. We try to get in there and see what's causing the problem and try to solve it as best we can.
Talk about homelessness? Oh, this is
Right, thank you very much.
I was thinking this is West Seattle Bridge. I was like, wait, what?
The person that just joined, could you please mute your, there you go, I gotcha. All right, thank you very much, Joe. All right, so Tom, maybe you can kick this off, because this is probably the biggest question, is how did these honey buckets end up in Junction Plaza Park? What was the decision process behind that? And if you want to unmute yourself, Tom, that would be great.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Laura. Yeah, so the hygiene station program was started in, I would say, late February, March as a response in part to COVID-19. And in particular, it was a response as businesses were closing, that there was a lack of places where people who were unhoused and living on the streets could get access to hygiene and places where they could use the restroom and wash their hands. And so the directive came down that in order to try and stem the spread of COVID, that we could be placing these hygiene stations around town in order to help provide that access, at least until such time as either the pandemic ended, or at such time as the county went to a phase that allowed for restaurants and businesses that had previously had bathrooms available to the general public would, and as well as city and government and libraries and community centers, once they were back open, then the need for these kinds of auxiliary units would go away and they would be removed. So it was always sort of thought of as a short-term way to help provide some services to those unhoused and help stem the COVID from spreading even further in these communities. So we went about citing 15 of these hygiene stations around the city in a way that was trying to make sure that we're covering as many of the different the city as we possibly could. And mayor's office, SPU, that included placing where there was need, placing them where we could easily site them on or next to city, or group that was going to host them. That we were also looking at areas where we weren't blocking other city businesses or other in the city, and weren't causing problems as far as access. And then also house units once the pandemic had receded, or once the county had gone into a level 3 and they were no longer needed, that we would then be able to pull these units out, and other facilities would be available in those areas at that point. So that's kind of what we did. We went around and found those locations. We cited a bunch. West Seattle was not on the, I think it was on the second phase of ones that of hygiene stations that we had cited. And we spoke with some community members here. Actually, we were contacted by advocates and community members who had said that they wanted a hygiene station in West Seattle. And we went about citing one at West Crest, as well as then here at Junction Plaza, and ultimately ended up moving the one at West Crest to a location near the Salvation Army, I guess it was the Salvation Army facility near Roxbury.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. Appreciate that, Tom. So, Aaron, over to you. And Aaron is the project manager at LEAD, and he'll be actually bringing some services into West Seattle. Lisa, thank you again for including the junction in that discussion. Aaron, what kind of issues do you find when there are hygiene stations or porta potties placed in a public park without any services that are either close or any counselors that visit that particular location? Is this unusual, what's happening in Junction Plaza Park, or is this tracking with what's happening in other city parks around Seattle?
You know, I think what I'll say is that our program works at an interesting intersection in the framing that you've provided for this meeting. You've said a couple times, and I think I really heard, and it was important, that you're looking at challenges in an area and you are not in the position of wanting to intentionally or unintentionally criminalize homelessness. You're looking to solve some challenges. And I think where our program intersects with this is that our case managers are really working at the intersection of the space that you are talking about. That if you've got something, for whatever reason, that people have come and congregated to an area, and some of them are causing public safety challenges, are engaging in low-level criminal activity in that's really where we're operating and working with people. In terms of like the placement of services, it's a little bit outside of the scope of what we do, but what we do have is when we have case managers interacting, working with law enforcement in coordination, looking for places that are like the hot points of where people are interacting, that's really where we intersect. Just as a couple of examples, if you came into Burien, the part where I live, the park that is surrounding the library is one particular area, the skate park, and what we see there is you see people coming and seeking certain services and trying to meet their needs in a number of different ways. And where we come into it and where we like to come into it is trying to come up with alternative ways to help people meet their needs, come up with creative ways to work with somebody and find a way that we can get their needs covered in a way that reduces the harm they may be having on the community.
All right, well, thank you, I appreciate it. Todd, could you please put your mic on mute? Hold on.
Sorry.
It's okay, I got it. Okay, well, thank you for that, I appreciate it. Joe Everett from the city attorney's office. Do you see a correlation between low-level crime and these hygiene stations? Have you created any data points between the two?
You know, Laura, that is a good question, but it's not something I've looked at. I don't usually take a look at SPD data when it comes to these types of issues. So I don't have a good answer for that. Sorry.
That's okay. Sina, maybe I can pose that question to you. Have you seen a correlation between the hygiene stations and lack of services and the low-level crime that we've been experiencing in the Junction? Sina?
Oh, sorry about that.
That's okay. But dang,
Sorry
Mike,
about that, Laura.
Everybody.
Sorry. So you're just talking about low-level crime. I just brought up some calls just at the beginning, at the start of October. And so with that, there were 7 disturbance calls, 2 of which involved a weapon. It was a knife. And one was seen with a gun. So or it threatened someone with a gun. And then there was 1 assault. 2 other calls involved drug dealing. So that's what I have from October 1st.
Okay, thanks for that. Well, I know the community has observed far more than that, and I know not every time that we call SPD, when we do call from the park, is that considered probably not, obviously not a priority one, but is that something that is in the, like a medium range of calls that it takes a while for the police officer to get out there, or does it just depend upon how many people are on patrol at that particular moment?
Depends on the call, the priority of the call. In progress calls, disturbances, assaults, weapon calls, you know, that's gonna bring you a quicker response, of course. And it's not to say that there weren't other reported crimes there or other reported calls within the summertime. I'm just saying that I just did it from October 1st. I have a list of calls, all of 2020.
Okay.
But I just wanted to, for the last, since the beginning part of October 1st.
Okay.
So I can take a look at the list in front of me right now.
All right, thank you, I appreciate that. All right, well, what we'll do is we're gonna go over to the reader questions that Tracy from the West Seattle blog has parsed out for me. And then I find with these meetings, quite often there's a lot of presentations. And so what I like to do is actually get to the questions. It never seems like we have enough time for questions. And I think it's really important that we get to the questions from the readers from the West Seattle blog, but also from the people who have taken the time out of their day to be on this call. I'll do my best to take a look at your hands up or the virtual hand. And then if you would like to ask your question to a specific person on the panel, please pose your question to that person. If not, I'll do my best to direct your question to the right person, or panel members, if you want to jump in, please do. All right, so the first one is, I'm going to send this over to you, Tom. And this is from a reader from the West Seattle blog, and they write, do they realize the ramifications and constant chaos from the homelessness in the park has on the nearby residents? So Tom, were you prepared for the activity that would arise from placing those hygiene stations in the middle of a commercial district without any services?
Yeah, we've placed hygiene stations around the city, and they get a variety of responses from people. We know that they're all heavily used and appreciated by people in the community, the unhoused people in the community who have a place to use the restroom and wash their hands on a regular basis. We have had some cited at and hosted at locations where community partners have been willing to provide some additional guardianship of those. And we have actually cited those in actual encampments where we've worked with our outreach coordinators and people who are engaged in relationship building with people who are living unhoused. And we have gotten commitments from those folks to help us take care of those units and watch over them and make sure that they're operating well. But overall, the program was developed in a way, and SPU was critical in helping us develop this program that would provide clean facilities and part of the way that we do this is that we clean them every day. They're pumped out every day. They're restocked by a vendor and each day as well. And they are also, there is a on view by Parks Department staff who look at each unit and report whether or not the damage has been done to them or whether or not they need additional services. So we do our best to make sure that they're looking good, that they're being cleaned up, that the litter is being picked up at each of those locations on a daily basis. Now, we know that we're setting these in places where there are people who are living unhoused. And as many of your community members have noted, there have been people who have been unhoused and living on the street in this area around that area for some time. So I think that the homeless community there has probably predated the siting of the hygiene station.
Well, we appreciate the comments about the logistics behind the hygiene station, certainly. But I think that the question really was, how was the hygiene station team prepared for the resulting destruction and also the increased crime and the violence arising from the fact that those were placed in the middle of a business district? Maybe somebody else on the panel would like to step into that question.
Nope.
Nope, nobody wants to answer that one.
Nope.
I do see
Well,
our Councilmember Herbold. Thank you, Lisa.
I don't know if I'm stepping in to answer the question. I might be responding with another question or idea. And I don't know how realistic this is. Sorry for sort of brainstorming on the fly here, and I don't mean to put anybody at all on the spot. But I know that there's been some level of staffing provided by the Millionaires Club at the portable trailers that SPU has been very helpful in locating and staffing throughout the city. I think we've got 3 now. And I'm wondering if there is a way to perhaps have a greater frequency, not of, somebody's there 24 hours a day, but, using that model with the Millionaires Club, having like a rotation of visits from a staff person at the different locations throughout the city, just out of the idea that if there is a presence of somebody who is responsible, not for controlling activity, but just somebody who it could have a deterrent effect on behavior that is disruptive or interfering with the general enjoyment of the park. Now that doesn't mean just people being present who are obviously homeless or poor, but we're talking, I think, about disruption of actions that there isn't just a perception of fear, but there is reason to have concern that there is a threat to public safety. But I'm just wondering whether or not there is a sort of a more robust staffing model that we could consider working with the Millionaires Club.
I think that
my card.
Okay, I think.
Okay, the front door does not open. I tried to get in that door to see if it would go into neutral. I'm sure it will, but I'll have to climb across and get in.
Todd, would you put your mic on mute?
Okay.
Sorry about that, Tom. Go ahead.
I think I was just going to say that that's the
So
staffing.
you can't do it with this vehicle?
Something that has come up.
Pull it back. Let me see if I can get it to move backwards.
Hold on, I'm trying to get Todd off of this call. Todd?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Tom. Sorry.
Yeah, I hear that my audio might be dropping off as well. But one of the things that we have done is that our outreach workers have been stopping by. Our NAV team has been stopping by in the past. So we have been doing some up to three visits per week and trying to engage with community members there and providing them with access to additional services. I think that the question about additional staffing is one that we can look at. I know it's come up in other locations as well, as to have additional outreach and a more more people, trying to engage people in conversation about what they can do to take the next step.
Well, thank you for that, Tom. Aaron, I mean, this is definitely in your wheelhouse. What kind of services will LEAD be able to offer? And I think Councilmember Herbold has a very valid point about having, you know, positive activation in the park. What are your thoughts about that?
I mean, just as a as a resident of the area, I've seen great things happen with positive activation in parks, and so from that perspective, there's a lot of great and creative things that can happen that I think really can not only they can really make some improvements in the neighborhood. Reach caseworkers, I just want to kind of talk about the unique perspective and the unique thing that they bring in. You can see, and what I'm hearing reflected back is something that I'm seeing all over the region, which is a lack of services in the area, which is a lack of services to get people into housing, treatment, whatever it is that they need to be able to access. And even when we do find them, they can be challenging to navigate. Well, that's kind of what Reach case managers are there to do. Reach case managers are there to do is develop a relationship with an individual. They have a harm reduction approach to kind of looking holistically at an individual to try to come up with what is the best way to support them. And that comes from everything from housing and all of the kind of these bigger questions all the way down to, hey, this is how you are interacting in this space right now. And this is the challenge that's coming. A really brief example, and I want to get to another thing, is just a client that we had in Burien who was pushing just this massive shopping cart all over a business area, dropping it in front of businesses and just walking away to go take care of other things, not intentionally maliciously towards the business, but just kind of carelessly. And after some time, the case manager was working with them trying to figure out how to resolve this. And someone in one of our meetings when we're coordinating around these clients finally said, can we get that guy a storage unit to put all of his possessions in so he doesn't have to worry about them all day? He doesn't have them sitting in front of the business, and he also has them in a secure place. And so it's everything from kind of like that level on upward that we're talking about. So it was with that in mind, and Laura, we talked a week ago about kind of our coming into the West Seattle area and looking at different areas that we wanted to help with and trying to figure out creatively how we can address all of the areas that need it along Del Ridge, West Seattle Junction, and all of these areas. And so one thing I just wanted to highlight and put out there is, since we've talked, we have a green sheet in to the City Council, working with Councilmember Herbold's office to work on a community-based outreach worker, a reach case worker doing that kind of work, specifically in the Junction City area, as we kind of became increasingly aware of the need for the work in there. And so this is the kind of what that can bring into it is in addition to working with that client, is an individual, a case manager, having a relationship with the neighborhood, knowing the police officers, knowing the business owners and things like that. And so I can answer some questions about that. I don't have everything that I can tell you about that, but it's just one way that we think about it, one way we are thinking about and pursuing helping people access those services and building those relationships in West Seattle Junction.
Laura, I also want to, I know that Donna Waters is from Parks Department is on the call, and she has some additional information about staffing as well and what parks are doing.
Okay, thank you so much. And Donna, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm glad that you were able to make the meeting. I did see in the chat that you did want to add to the comments here. And then after we hear from you, if you want to put your hand up or raise your hand virtually or type in the chat session, I'll go ahead and start to filter through the comments. And please keep in mind that this is a productive conversation to move us to a place where we can still continue to help serve the folks that are unhoused, but also create and recreate a safe and clean business district, because what we've experienced through the summer cannot continue any longer. So this is going to be a productive conversation. Again, let's go ahead and make sure that we keep the comments productive. And also we can move the conversation along to a conclusion that is going to work not only for the community, but for the folks that are experiencing homelessness. So Donna, if you'd like to go ahead and make your comment. Thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it.
Hi, again, my name's Donna Waters, and I am the encampment manager for the Parks Department. I also manage our West Seattle Parks District. Just in regards to staffing, I just kind of wanted to piggyback a little bit on what Tom was saying. Currently, the encampment team that specializes in our encampment work for the Parks Department visits the Junction Plaza Park Monday, Thursday. They litter pick, they make any observations regarding any damage or any debris that's in the area. They take photos daily, and that is sent to me as well as a data person. And then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Park Security Department does the same thing outside of the litter picking because they are security. They can only do observation, take photos because they're covering other routes. Our Southwest District resource crew that works in the Southwest District, they clean the park Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. So I just wanted to give that information to you folks so you knew the efforts that we were putting in there to keep the park clean.
Okay, that's it. Thank you so much for giving us that information. It's that's a surprising number of times that the park has been cleaned, only because maybe the use of the park is much higher than we had anticipated, because quite often the park has an insurmountable amount of trash. So maybe there's more people using the park than we had thought, but thank you for that. Okay, so let's go ahead and move over to the comments. I know Ashley, you've had your hand up, and you also have a comment in the chat session. So if you'd like to unmute yourself, and if you want to direct your question to a particular person, please do.
This is sort of general. I am one of the neighbors of Junction Plaza Park. I have the pleasure of having every single window of my apartment facing the park. So I have 24/7 view. I have called multiple times the last month. My partner put out a fire that was left unattended, and the responding officers arrived and basically told us that they couldn't do anything because the court system's not processing any misdemeanor crimes currently. And when we asked what we could do to prevent this, we were told move, which was not the answer I was hoping to hear. And regarding to the garbage that Donna was just talking about, I have noticed the park looks way better than it has, but I don't think it's the volume of people. I see the folks in the park ripping the garbage out of the cans and throwing it around the park. The porta potties, as many times as you want to sanitize them, they're getting pushed over and dumped out like daily. The hand washing station is getting thrown into the street and damaged almost every day. So it's the violence. I think it's like a baby step process, and anybody can chime in. Like, we need to contain the violence situation. I realize all these folks are homeless, and we need to find a place for them, and I'm worried for them. But I've had neighbors with knives pulled on them. I have been physically attacked by a person. I've watched violent fights. That part, like the fear part, I think we need to deal with first. Like putting the fire out before we deal with the smoke, basically. And if anybody has ideas of how we do that, I would love to hear.
So from our panel, who would like to address that statement and also the questions arising from the people in the park?
Laura, Cena Avenger again. I'm just talking on behalf of the police side. Originally, they were talking about misdemeanors, that we could not make the arrest and then have them booked in. I mean, we could make the arrest, but they wouldn't be able to be booked into the King County Jail. However, given some of the things that are happening, if there's a person crime, we can still do that. If a crime is being committed against a person, whether it's a misdemeanor, say like an assault. Now, the arrest can happen, and we can book them into jail. Another thing is, if someone's threatening you with a knife or some kind of weapon, I mean, that's a felony level crime. So please don't stop calling. I apologize if it came off that way with the officer saying move. That's not something that we were saying here to move, but please continue to call 911.
Ashley, I think Ashley would like to respond to that.
I would. I just wanted to say that the 2 times that we've called for particularly very violent crimes that were like very violent fights that interfered with oncoming traffic and other things, both times, folks, including the knife day, the call you have, they arrested the person, but then they were back in the park within an hour of being arrested. So I don't really understand if the idea was to just relocate them, but it didn't solve the issue. Like they need to be arrested or they need to be taken further or maybe taken somewhere to cool off. But both times they were back within an hour and back at their nonsense.
Ashley, I can't say, in what actually happened to that individual. If they were booked in and they were released, I would have to do some research on that. So when did that happen? What day was that? Was that on like October 7th?
Let me pull up. I originally emailed Tom actually with videos of that, the fight day, and that was quite a while ago. I've been trying to keep this thread going of figuring out how do we resolve this for a while. So I would say that's been over a month, but around the 7th is the day the gentleman had the knife and was brandishing it, pretending to stab things, was attacking inanimate objects in the park, screaming at passersby with it. And I saw him get handcuffed, but then within an hour, he was still in the park. I never actually saw him arrested.
Ashley, you know what? I'm going to give you my email address so we can take it offline, and then we can have a one-on-one so we don't hold up anybody else. How about that?
Okay, let's go ahead and thank you very much. Just put that in the parking lot and I will connect you. I have both of your emails, so I will connect you after this meeting.
Perfect.
So
thank you.
The question is certainly going to arise, so I'm going to pose it now. And the question is, when it comes to placing hygiene stations within the city, was it the right decision to place these hygiene stations in the middle of a business district, cut off from any services, especially during the pandemic? And remember, we have no bridge, if everybody's not forgotten that. And, was it the right decision to put these hygiene stations in the middle of a business district without any services wrapped around them? Now that we're into this a few months later, and Tom, I'm going to just go put this back on you. In retrospect, should these hygiene stations been put in a different location? Maybe something downtown that they're closer to shelter, people are closer to shelter and food and services and mental health outreach. What do you think now that we're into this for a few months?
Yeah, I absolutely have to disagree that we need to provide these services where people are, and we need to be, we are in a pandemic, and businesses in this area, as well as all across the city, were closed, and some remain closed and weren't able to provide those access points for people to, get hygiene, have a bathroom, have a place to wash their hands, which is so important in keeping people from getting ill, right? But having said that, when you and I met back in June and we talked about this, we said that we would always be reevaluating the siting and the locations And I think that this conversation is a part of that process of reevaluation. We were going to be listening. When we first cited the location, I did go around and talk to some of the businesses that were in the area, that were the few that were open, and talk to business leaders, and they were fine with it. And I went back and circled back about a month and a half later, and they remain
I
you know,
think
that
we
was
lost you
several
for a
months
minute
ago,
there,
and that
Tom.
was back in July, August. So hearing these, so am I back? So anyway, I just want to say that we are listening, and these comments and your comments are important, and they are a part of the review process that we're going through. And this, none of the hygiene stations that we've cited were meant to be long-term. They were always meant to be pandemic related, which at the time that we were citing them was only going to be continued, you know, we were told, you know, through the, you know, through July, maybe August, that kind of thing. But of course that's changed as we've kind of gone down the pathway. So was it cited in the wrong place? No. We have homeless people everywhere in the city. They need services. Are we listening to your comments? Yes, we are. And you know, we will move forward with them in mind.
Well, I think it's interesting, and as you're speaking, I'm also reading the chat as well, and the people on our chat session, certainly, Tom, are reflecting on the comments that we've been receiving, and also the hundreds of comments on the West Seattle blog. And Elizabeth states they weren't here, and I think Elizabeth is meaning the homeless folks weren't here before the units were installed. And we certainly did have people in the park, but we have not dealt or grappled with the amount of people that are unfamiliar to the junction. We do have people, as any of the business owners that are on this call today, we have our familiar faces. We know them by name. We know the name of their dogs. And these are people that we've never seen before, Tom. And so I'm going to have to respectfully disagree with you, because the hygiene stations attracted brand new faces to the junction that we've never seen before. And so I believe that the stations actually attracted the people that attracted the crime, that attracted the drug use, that attracted the prostitution into the business district. And so as I'm reading the chat comments, you know, please weigh in, everybody, and agree or disagree. Samantha does ask, you know, is there a way to move the hygiene stations to another location? It is negatively impacting all of our businesses in a time when business is very difficult. I'm going to ask, let's see here, I'm going to ask Bill from Seattle Public Utilities, you know, as we look at this, and maybe Donna, you can weigh in on this too, you know, is it time to rethink something when we find that it's been placed in a location and it's just not the right, it's just not the right space for the hygiene stations? So Bill, do you want to weigh in on that? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think, you know, we're part of a team, and it's a citywide effort as far as citing where these units go. You know, we've been working with people in the city who seem to know better where the need is. That's definitely not my bailiwick at all.
Don, would you like to weigh in on this? Like, if there was a group of people that were responsible for the placement of the hygiene station, and you know, we all experiment. We put things in a location, we make decisions as business leaders or business owners or community members, and then there's a period of reevaluation where you look at it and go, this probably, we could do something different with this. We could do something better with this. Donna, where are you falling on this discussion with the placement of the hygiene stations in a park that, you know, you're responsible for?
I think as a city, we are all responsible with the interdepartmental team that worked on this. It would have to go through the team. I cannot make a sole decision on moving any Sani cans. It would go through the team and through a process that, a decision process. It wouldn't just be mine. I saw something about, and I'm sorry, Ashley, you had noted that the hand washing station has been thrown into the street, and that I've never has been reported by the 3 teams that go out there daily. My team takes pictures every time they're there. That I was not aware of. Today was the first time that I had experienced one that had been tipped over. I can, Bill, I don't know if the vendor has an additional way of anchoring that. Maybe we could look into that. I have no problem in looking into that.
Yeah, we can look into that. It seems to always be, well, not always, but the smaller one sometimes gets tipped. This is the first report I've had from this park, as opposed to other places in the city.
And Tess, you know, just as we open up the lens, not only from West Seattle, but to the entire city, the conversation and the comments that you're reading in the chat and also listening to today, do these comments reflect other parts of the city? Are you hearing the same thing about increased crime in relation to the placement of these hygiene stations?
Yeah, thanks. It's a great question. And I think as the other panelists have noted, we haven't been able to really establish a specific correlation between the hygiene stations and increased crime. What we do know is that the presence of homelessness is definitely increased across the city. There's often a correlation between homelessness that's made by folks between homelessness and crime. We absolutely appreciate the concerns that our community members are sharing with us. As Tom noted, in terms of the question of providing contact and outreach, Reach reports to us that they are in the park about 1 time a week, and the city's own navigation team has been there a couple times a week. That is on par with what is happening in other locations where there are hygiene stations. And so, I mean, I would say that eyes on the Junction Plaza are very similar to what we're seeing across the other locations where there are hygiene stations. To Tom's point about the criteria for siting and the broader need for making sure that we have hygiene stations, what we do notice in areas where there are not hygiene stations is that there tends to be more sort of outdoor use in terms of going to the bathroom. We feel very strongly that having hygiene stations, while those more informal locations where people can use the restroom, can get fresh water and clean up as sometimes occurs in bathrooms, that is, I mean, it's a critical amenity, not just for the folks who are experiencing homelessness, but also to really make sure that we are not placing at risk the surrounding community for public health risks. The hygiene stations really serve that dual purpose of addressing public health risks and concerns as well. And so Tom is absolutely right. These conversations are a big part of what we take into consideration as a city as we are looking at locations and the progress of the value of those stations, again, to the folks who are using as well as to the surrounding community.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate giving us some insight on that. I also have Dan Austin. He's raised his hand. Dan, if you'd like to unmute yourself.
And I lowered my hand. Look at that. Proper etiquette. Hey, so I'm a bar owner. If I if I have just decided with my business that I'm going to put a concert on, and that concert, let's say I'm bringing a band in, they start having drug problems in the neighborhood and fights in the neighborhood because of the crowd I'm attracting, I lose my business license. There's issues with that. You guys have created a situation where you have made an environment where there is more drug use, there's weapons being cited, there's violence happening. As a business owner, I have to make a correction immediately or I will lose my business. All I'm hearing is what corrections you guys aren't making, that you're listening, but I have not heard a single thing yet that you guys are going to do to help improve this situation. I don't want to see rocks and things being thrown through local businesses like it happened at QFC. I don't want Ashley walking around having to deal with knives. This is a critical situation for the safety of our community, and I'm not hearing the urgency from you guys about what you're going to take back and do. And that very much disappoints me, and I'd like to give you an opportunity to let me know why I'm wrong, and I should be hearing something different, and I'm just not listening. Let me know where I'm wrong here. I appreciate it.
Well, that certainly is a loaded question, Dan. I really appreciate you voicing that. Who from the panel would like to tackle that question?
Well, the one comment that I have is that we're still in the middle of a pandemic, and we're still needing to provide services to people in order to, address that. So I think that if that were not the case, if we were in phase 3 and other facilities were available, you would see the hygiene station gone, as probably all of them would be removed at some point.
Tom, I appreciate that, but I also think public health situation of needles around a park, knives in people's hands who are possibly having mental issues, and assaults are also very unhealthy for the public. So where's the balance in that? I think is what most of us on this call would like to see. But I appreciate you saying that.
And Ashley, it looks like you have your hand raised.
I just wanted to be clear that specifically the hand washing station isn't what the problem is. I said this in the comments in a message. The porta potties are pre-shelter for legal activity, but also they're just being used to get kicked around by people. If it were literally just a hand washing station, it might be fine. It'd probably still get tossed into the street or knocked over or whatever, considering the crime rate. It's the actual porta potties that are the issue.
And Donna, I'd seen your hand. Thank you for that, Ashley. Donna, I'd seen your hand up earlier. Would you like to also comment?
I wanted to address the needles. We do obviously litter pick the needles in the park, but I saw something, oh gosh, I just hit the button, sorry. I just saw a comment regarding needles in your alley, and SPU does have the needle program and they respond within 24 hours. Is everyone aware of that? Ashley, I think has a question.
So I called, when the last time we called, we had the fire situation. I explained to the officer that I, unfortunately, again, have a very clear view of the park from my apartment. I was watching a gentleman shoot up in the park and he just tosses them over his shoulder. And I mentioned to the officer, like, what can I do about this? And he told me that shooting up in the park is actually not illegal and they can't do about it. And I'm, okay, well, can we talk to them about proper disposal? But then one of my neighbors went out there to walk his dog recently and somebody had ripped the needle container off the side of the porta potty and sprinkled it all over the park. So it's, again, like the trickle down, like having the box is cool, but like, how do we prevent the crime that's making that box have to be there? You know, like the sanitation part of that. I mean, you guys can't be responsible for every time a guy throws a needle in the park. So how do we prevent it from happening to begin with?
Tom, would you like to address this? maybe he just can't hear us. I think his wireless is a little slow. Well, we're at 3 o'clock, and so as a wrap up and next steps, there's obviously a disconnect between the logic of putting a hygiene station in the middle of a business district and the impact it has on our community members and also our businesses. There's the humanity of making sure people have access to bathrooms. But then there's also the impact that is not being realized by the hygiene station team, the things that our community and our business owners have had to deal with in these last few months have been horrific, on top of a pandemic and also on top of the bridge closure. As you can see from these comments in this chat, the comments from the people on this call today, the comments in the West Seattle blog, the emails, the multiple emails that have been sent to the hygiene station, the logic behind putting hygiene stations in a business district sounds good on paper, but the execution of it is something that needs to be readdressed. So after this meeting, I'll send a recap to everybody at the hygiene station. Tracy Record is on this call. She is our intrepid editor from the West Seattle blog. She'll also be reporting on this meeting as well. The meeting has been recorded, so there'll also be a full recording of this meeting, but this is just the first meeting that we're going to be having. And I can assure you that we need to do a different job helping people who are experiencing homelessness. And the answer is not putting hygiene stations in the middle of a business district. So I want to appreciate everybody being here today. I appreciate the panel. I appreciate all the community members. Please continue to read the West Seattle blog, continue to reach out to the hygiene station team. And as always, please, please always contact 911 and have a safe rest of your day. Thanks everybody for being here.